So my name is Leonard. I'm the founder of the Blacklist, which began as an annual list of Hollywood's most liked unproduced screenplays and has evolved in the past few years into a website that aspires to act as a more efficient marketplace for the work of screenwriters and equally so an advocacy organization for screenwriters generally to make sure they get, frankly, the credit and monetary compensation they deserve, which in my opinion is severely wanting in the way Hollywood is currently organized. And so it was only natural when CreativeFuture reached out to me as an organization that is about creating the conditions for providing for a sustainable creative future for us all, that I jumped into the opportunity to moderate this panel, especially when they told me who would be on it. So thank you again, Ruth and CreativeFuture, for having me, and hopefully I will do right by you guys and moderate a global panel for everyone. I want to start by letting actually our panelists introduce themselves, because frankly my brain doesn't have the capacity to remember all of the details that make them as esteemed as they are. So we're going to start with Nikole, with whom I have a very special relationship because her script Stockholm, Pennsylvania, which is here at the festival, was on the Blacklist.
It's true. The script was on the Blacklist in 2012. And got the Nikole Fellowship that same year, which led to the Blacklist, which was actually really huge for the project and for me as a writer. And it's my first script, my first film, and went through the screenwriting lab and the composer and sound lab, and is now here in competition.
I don't have a mic, so I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know. My name is Eugene, Jarecki. I've been at the festival a few times in my life. My first time here was a long time ago when I was 21 years old with my first movie, and I've had intervals of wonderful experience with my films here ever since. Think of Sundance very much as a family, and a family dedicated to preserving a very pure, independent voice in the American landscape, which is increasingly not so independent. And so it's a haven for me in a weary world.
Early on was not like the other thing I love, and I only discovered blogging your bio last night. You were mentored as a young filmmaker by Belgian Panelists.
I was. I still am. Yeah.
Big fan.
I'm Chloe. I'm the writer, director, and producer of Sundance Project Company. It's in the U.S. Dramatic Competition. It's my first movie. Went through the writer's lab, director's lab, we did sound lab together as Skywalker. A music lab. So the film really brought us on this.
My name is Federbush. I'm the International Director of the Feature Film Program at Sundance Institute. We support the screenwriting and directing labs, it's music and sound design labs, emerging filmmakers from all around the world, and I also have screenwriting labs that run all around the world. Prior to joining Sundance, I worked for 17 years as a production and acquisition executive in the independent film world, including with Vitale.
Hi, I'm Ruth Vitale, Executive Director of CreativeFuture. You've heard a little bit about our video. Prior to that, I've been in independent film distribution for probably almost my entire career, from Vestron to New Line to Fine Line, where Paul and I worked together. I co-founded Paramount Classics, First Look. I've kind of done it all. Released about 100 films and spent a great deal of time at Sundance discovering first-time filmmakers, and it's been a real privilege to work in the world.
So as the kids say these days, or I told the kids say, go big or go home. And since we have somewhat limited amount of time, I'm just going to jump in with a big question to start off with. I'm actually curious for Ruth, Paul, and Eugene, your experience since you had this sort of longitudinal view of the industry. Technology, obviously, it supports and allows for piracy. But it also has a great deal of advantages in terms of creating content in a way that we couldn't a long time ago. On balance, is technology a good thing or a bad thing for filmmakers? Like I said, big headline question, we'll dig in.
Okay. Well, I think on balance, it's been a very positive thing for filmmaking. Obviously, it's lowered the entry barrier for filmmakers. As you know, I don't know have the exact metrics on this, but I do know that submissions to the festival, ever since digital filmmaking has started, has sort of grown exponentially. So it allows filmmakers, if I can remember Blair Witch Project.
Right.
The first one I remember our friend Cassie and I were saying, like, if this worked, it's a game changer. And it was a game changer, I think. So I think in the long term, I mean, the big picture is that technology has been very good.
I personally think that technology is a very, very good thing for filmmakers because it's a very entry door. There are many platforms for people to be discovered on. We talked about this a little bit yesterday in our panel about the fact that more voices have a chance of being heard and being discovered. You know, I mean, the other side of it is the privacy issue, but we're trying all to work toward having that not happen. But I think on the outside, technology has allowed more people to find their voice.
And how does that change the process of developing creative content? Eugene, I mean, you were obviously making documentaries sort of before the real rise of technology, both in terms of production but also in terms of distribution. Has the rise of that affected how you develop the stories you're trying to tell?
Sure. I mean, I was actually making fiction films on 35. That was my first film here, was a fiction film. And in a certain way, the rise of the technology has probably invited my transition for these years of documentary, because all of a sudden the process of trying to get your voice heard in those days was up against an extremely top-heavy studio system. The independent movement was growing at the beginning of that time, with Ruth and others kind of sort of undermining the extraordinary architecture that had been built that was a very obstructing architecture for individual voices. And so the rise of the technologies liberated a lot of us to make films, and without which we would have struggled more. I don't know that we wouldn't have gotten over, but we would have struggled more. And I'm not sure what that teaches us, because struggle is a very, very productive thing. And to make something simply easy, I was a music producer before all this, and I remember when digital music emerged, and all of a sudden everybody could have a drum machine. Well, the number of talented drummers had not increased. That was still going to be static in the population. But now every knucklehead with a 110 outlet in his house could suddenly make noises that you thought sounded like drumming, and then later on you'd feel, well, the soul's been ripped out of this thing. There's no actual rhythm here. There's just electronics turned into metronomic things. Now that created a music form that has its own commentary to make on modern life and on. So every time I come at one of these sort of reflections on how did the technology step in, technology is not neutral. You know, we think, well, I'm a writer, so whether I write on a piece of paper or type or go on a computer, I'm just me. I don't think that's true at all. I edit completely differently in the nonlinear landscape of technology today than I edited when I was cutting celluloid. It's completely different because the celluloid cutting demanded, because it was so onerous a process, to cut the thing, and if you cut it too much, all of a sudden you couldn't even use it anymore because it would get jammed up in the steam bed. So you had to be more sure. You had to be a more visionary artist in that moment. I'm not commenting overall. You could be a great visionary and be a completely nonlinear geek. And I kind of was becoming that too, but I was torn because I was also a person who had vision grounded in, I'm making an invested choice here with this piece of physical celluloid. Then I get a nonlinear, I can make a million choices in a minute. And now what you're seeing is not necessarily a coherent, simple vision, but rather, if you give an infinite number of monkeys an infinite number of typewriters, at one point they'll type Shakespeare. And my films risk becoming that if the technology is imagined to be neutral. And in fact, what it's doing is liberating a kind of, how can I cater and pander, and how can I hit all the notes? Sometimes you shouldn't hit all the notes. So there are issues here that are always pro and con.
Well, actually, let me ask you the question that I started with.
You mean I didn't answer your question?
Yeah, well, I think you. I think you got a direct answer from Ruth and Nikole on the question generator, but I want to see you. Good or bad?
Good or bad? It's a parallel universe. Everything about modern life is defined by the fact that we are watching the town square that we grew up to know and love be replaced by a corollary in the digital universe. The bank is being replaced by online banking. The post office that we loved has been full scale replaced by a technology that actually is read by the central authority. So we used to seal envelopes with our tongue. Now we assume that that no longer matters and that everything is read in color. We've replaced the press with the online press, which is all manner of pro and con that we can raise about that. And you go around that little Jimmy Stewart town square,
right,
and we are giving over to a digital expression of ourselves that is absolutely non-neutral. It changes the whole future of mankind. And there is, in fact, no Magna Carta for it. There has been no development of a basic architecture of the standoff between rights and accountability that go with that. And the reason I raise that is, if you think that you're living in a world that is so non-neutral, that every digitalization of what you do has non-neutral implications for your life, then of course it's going to impact on the nature of the filmmaking for the good and for the bad, because online banking gives me more leverage over the banks. I can make those guys bid against each other. There's one bank in one town, I come up, they give me the rate they give me, so it gives me bargaining power. The same with the press. I don't like your press, I'll go to them with a keystroke. I don't have to worry about going to get a new subscription. And. So that whole bargaining power that the culture gets, and Etsy and eBay and the trading and the peer-to-peer, that's all tremendously empowering. But at the same time, it comes with incredible impositions on our lives, like the reading of our email, like the lack of privacy, like the sort of we're all lemmings.
Right.
Well, that also is happening in the cultural space. We become more lemming in the cultural space. We become more non-linearly fetishized in the cultural space. Little details. The God is in the details. It used to be the devil's in the details.
I'm curious, and I think that's a good